Men who have sold donated sperm and gave permission for the child to contact you at 18. What is your story? A guy I know in his 70s got a call from a guy in his 50s saying, "Hey, I'm your son." Credit to the guy in his 50s if that's the reason he called. Just to warn his bio dad's family. Class move. I donated for 6 months in university. Twice a week. I gave consent to be contacted. That was close to 20 years ago now. I did call and ask once. My sperm resulted in 24 successful pregnancies. That was all the office could tell me. I have not done 23 and more anything like that. Edit. Sitcom title. My aunts had to get a donor for both children. And he happened to live in the same neighborhood. Can't remember if that was a coincidence or not. But he is a close family friend now. He comes over for their birthdays and other family events. They don't refer to him as their dad really. Only as a joke. But he is very close with our family. I was donor conceived. I took a DNA test. His natural born daughter took a DNA test. So really neither of us gave permission. There are 28 siblings so far. It was quite a shock. I wasn't expecting it and didn't know. I was 38. I've met the donor and most of the half siblings. He's a cool guy. I think it is eerie how I see many of my mannerisms in him and the other siblings. I know there is a wide range of emotions for people who experience this sort of thing. But for me it was generally positive. DNA testing makes the permission difficult to enforce. My friend's dad donated in the 80s and some of his offspring recently reached out to him after DNA testing. At my job we did a media interview with a guy who donated sperm at least once a month for the money throughout most of his 20s. Nearly 10 years. He recently found out that there is a Facebook group with over 100 women from all over the world that have had children from his donated sperm. Edit. This was an interview about his whole story. Not a job interview where it just randomly came up. It was for an internal video made for TV executives and writers to potentially create a TV show based off his story. Obligatory not me. But I don't think I'll get another chance to tell the story. An ex-girlfriend of mine has an uncle who had donated sperm back in the 90s. At some point, he started reaching out to the parents of his biological children to see if they wanted to meet their bio dad, and now, every summer, he flies out all the children who wanted to be in contact to Yosemite, CA for a week of camping. I remember the first, and only, time I went I was shocked to know that at least 10 of his children come every year from all around the USA to spend time with him for a week. Apparently, the year I went with them was also the year that another one of his bio children got in contact with the uncle for the first time and spent the week out near Yosemite with all of her half-brothers' sisters. I don't keep in contact with the uncle or my ex anymore. But I can assume that more of his children have contacted him each year so they can spend time getting to know their bio dad. Not me, but a friend of my father-in-law. Guy is 86 and has been dealing with cancer for decades. He lost the will to live until one day he gets a call from his supposed daughter. He was a donor in the 70s and with Ancestry.com they were able to reconnect. They were so sweet and have totally involved him in their lives. He has grandchildren he didn't know about and an entire family when he thought he would die alone. It's just a beautiful story. I get happy whenever I hear it because he is such a nice man. Funny enough, he has been cancer free almost exactly since they connected. I'm a child born via sperm donation. At one point in my life I did tons of research to find him. I also did Ancestry and found some half siblings but no donor. But I thought about it more and looked over the records I did have from the donor company. He was a college student at the time and asked not to be contacted. He probably has a family now who may or may not know about his past donation. And my gut feeling is that he did it for the money. So I've decided to let it go. Totally not an answer, but my GF and I were just wondering about whether there were any protocols for how much of one donor's sperm is allowed to be distributed within a given area. Like, what could prevent two moms from having the donor's offspring in the same area and having those kids grow up and meet as teens adults? start a relationship and realize they are related? Some clinics will put a cap on number of families. But there are man cases of people have dozens. Even up to 40, 80, 100 half siblings. It brings up the ethics around this. And many donor conceived people are vehemently against this and believe there needs to be a limit in place. I'm a donor child, but the man didn't give permission for me to get in touch. I've always been a bit curious, particularly as we now do the same job. But more about any family history of disease which might be relevant, although I assume nothing major or he wouldn't have been able to donate. I think I would have reached out when I was 19/20, but I wouldn't anymore if I had the choice. I call the donor my father, but my dad will always be the one who raised me and played with me and loved me even though he died when I was young. He's the one that matters. But I am grateful to those who donate, enabling my family to have a child without a genetic illness. You would be surprised by how much genes incorporate into your lifestyle and even mannerisms. I met my biological father when I was 25 after never meeting or seeing him my whole life. The little things were so weird. We sat in a chair the same way, we nervously bit the skin next to our fingernails at the same time. The first drink I ever ordered was a White Russian because I thought it was interesting. Lo and behold, when we met, he and his family bring White Russians to the lake because it's their favorite drink. I've kept a $2 bill in my wallet since I was 14 for no reason at all. After we talked, he has had a $2 bill in his wallet since he was a kid too. Just really weird things, coincidences. Kind of similar. I was approached by my longtime childhood friend and she asked if I would be a donor for her and her wife. I agreed. And they asked if I would be okay with being in their life. To take pictures and be around so the child knows who I am. Knows I'm a friend. And also knows I'm the biological donor. Etc. So there's no questions down the road. I agreed and it's been awesome so far. He just turned 2 and he's a tornado, I warned them. But he's loved more than most children will be. Coming from a background in psych, I figured developmentally it would be easier to be labeled as a friend. And not an unknown. Questions of turmoil of where did I come from? Etc. I guess we'll see. I was a donor. And when this happened to me, it was okay. 4 separate offspring at various times over the course of about 6 months contacted me. All just as they turned 18 and records were open to them. It was cool for me to see pictures of them and how much they looked like me. It was also good to hear the stories from their parents of how I helped them conceive a much needed child. Which I really appreciated. But that was all. A few nice, polite emails were exchanged. Some kindnesses. And then we stopped emailing. I didn't want or expect more. I'm just glad to know they existed. And that they got to connect with their biological heritage. I supposedly, as far as the donor system estimates, have a lot more out there. But I expect these are the only ones that will contact me. Since I assume most of them will want to do it as soon as they can, and all of my donations happened within an 18-month span. Donor for lesbian friends. Their son doesn't know yet but knows I'm his godfather. It isn't something that they will keep from him though when he asks. You. Must be rough not knowing who your dad is. Huh. Son. Yeah. I wonder who it could be. A woman I went to college with reached out and asked me to be a sperm donor as her husband was infertile. I donated for 6 months but she found out she had infertility issues herself and gave up. They looked into adoption but could not afford it. I feel bad for them. Lesbian couple I was friends with wanted a baby but all the donors they met were assholes. In the end I said, if you want my baby, gravy. I'm fine with that. You guys know me well enough and it's not like I want kids, so you might as well the wanted to pay me, so I just said put you a cute 10 in the tank of my car and buy me a bag of chips. Strangely the wee boy was born on my birthday. So that's my dad's girlfriend. Me and this kid all born on the same day. Throughout history many have asked, what is the price of a human life? Child. So you got paid some gas to be my father? You. All that and a bag of chips. One of my good friends was a donor child. Her parents gave her full permission and access to the donor's information, as he consented, but she never cared to meet him or contact him. She would say something along the lines of, apart from his biological role, he has nothing to do with my life. Edit. The family had his medical history prior to the procedure to ensure no complications. No need for the apart from containing her medical history he plays no role comments. Aside from jerking off in a cup for $200. He didn't do much to make me who I am. My uncle, who has been happily married to my other uncle for years, got one of those ancestry DNA tests as a gift. I guess it said something like, you have one sister and one niece who has taken the test, as well as your son. Hold up. So my uncle had donated sperm when he was in medical school 20 plus years ago and found out he had a son through the test. They contacted each other and had a nice lunch together, and that was it. I have a friend who was raised by two lesbians but conceived by a Turkey-based party. Which, if you don't know what that is, I didn't either. Apparently sometime in the early 80s, a bunch of LGBTQ folk wanting kids all met somewhere in a New York apartment. The men, as there are multiple, all ejaculated into a receptacle of some kind, perhaps a turkey baster, and that product was then inserted into one of the female partners with the hope they would get pregnant. His mom used to share this story with us a lot while under the influence as we grew up. At some point, when he hit about 23ish, he did in fact attempt to find his biological dad, because he needed to know some things about his genetic health that could really only be answered if he knew the other half. And what we came to was essentially a who knows thanks to this. Apparently it would have been possible to maybe get a genetics test, but also apparently, at that point on history at least, a very good chance that incredibly expensive route doesn't lead anywhere. So he's fine just not knowing. Least last time I heard from him. Not me, but a good friend. Kids had contacted each other already, and some were siblings because the mom used his stuff several times. He met them all and everyone gets along. Seems truly good for everyone in their case. Dad is retired and road trips a lot, so when he's near one they have coffee and catch up IRL. So not exactly what you'd consider donor. But I got an ex-prego and she never told me. 10 years later I do a 23andMe DNA test and now I have a 10-year-old daughter. Scary. But I think it worked out the best way possible. Remove the link because the internet is scary. If you want the link, personal message me. Also just for fun. I also donated to a lesbian couple, so I have 2 contributions to this thread. A family member of mine did this but didn't give any permissions. A bio child, now an adult, was able to figure out who he most likely was based on genealogy websites, and the child reached out to me since this family member doesn't have a social media presence. I believe he has since contacted the bio child, but the concern isn't this one person, but that it could be many potential bio children in the world out there somewhere. On the bio child's part, they now live on a different continent and appear to be a happy, functional adult who understands the awkwardness of the situation but simply wants to know more about their biological family. So I did actually do this. Basically I had just graduated college, my girlfriend and I needed some extra cash, and I said, well, this is a cool idea. I have always wanted kids and my girlfriend can no longer have biological children due to bad endometriosis tearing up her uterus. From a purely biological perspective, I think it's kind of neat that my genetics are out there in the world possibly. As for why I said it was phone to contact me, I figure at that point it's up to the kid if they want to have any kind of relationship. And it would suck to know that someone could knowingly help create you and not only not want anything to do with you but actively prevent you from learning about them. Anyways, this was about 8 years ago, so remind me in 10 years and I'll let you know if it comes up. BTW, I do have a son. He's not biologically mine, but I still love his adorable ass. A couple friends of mine, twins, donated sperm in college pretty often. They weren't poor or anything, just found it to be a good way to earn some spending money. A few years ago one of the twins passed away in a pretty tragic accident. He was in his mid-early 20s. The family was devastated, and as you can imagine, losing a twin has got to be incredibly difficult. It turns out the donated sperm from my friend who passed away was put to use, and his family reached out to the families of the children. From what I understand, they've been able to build a relationship with the children, who are now a kind of biological link to their lost family member. My wife had fertility issues and we looked at receiving a donor egg. When one was lined up, I felt I needed to donate sperm as a way of paying it forward. But then my wife became pregnant with her own egg. I feel like our good karma paid off, and our only child will have half siblings. I'm about 20 now and have been debating if I should donate my sperm. No underlying health conditions. Nothing that'd make them say no. And I don't intend to have children. So this would be the only way my bloodline continues. But I'm naturally nervous. I'd never choose to be anonymous. And I'd encourage a receiver to keep in contact if they want to. But I'm still nervous how the kid would feel knowing their real dad is some lonely guy who just wanted them to exist to feel less alone. I am on the other side. I am the product of a donor. Not really what this thread is about. But I did not get permission. Instead I found my donor father via his brother who is on 23andMe. I didn't find him until well past my 30s. I ended up speaking with him over the phone. And then with my donor father. And it was nice. I'm apparently his only donor offspring and he has 3 other adult children, who are all my half brothers, which is obvious. But weird. In the end, it was a disappointing experience since his wife did not like that I was reaching out and she felt threatened for some reason. On top of it, I have a difficult relationship with my real parents, and so I think I set my expectations too high going in, with hopes of forming some deeper relationship, which will likely never happen. It at least gave me closure on a very weird aspect of my existence. My dad donated sperm to the niece of my mom and her wife, and I got 2 sweet ass half brothers from that. My neighbor did it. One of his kids did an ancestry test and somehow like 10 plus people reached out to him saying they were his biological children. Pretty insane story, but he's a single guy and extremely happy he has some of them in his life now. Reads the title. Oh, this is too specific. No way there's gonna be more than 10 comments. Just 1 hour later. My husband isn't a redditor, but I'll tell our story. I'm very close to my second cousin, who is a married lesbian. When she told me the amount of coin they were about to drop for 1 vial of frozen sperm with a 50% chance of it working, I talked to my husband about donating to them. Yes, it was a group effort. Spent about a year tracking cycles and popping over to make a deposit a few times a month. We were all about to call it when she finally got pregnant. And now has a 3-year-old. We both drew up wills and prepared for anything to happen. We will get custody of the child. He has given permission for her to contact him at any time and we see her as cousins, but she doesn't know because we didn't want to take anything away from her other mom. I'm sure when the child is old enough to comprehend, she will be told and she can do whatever with the information. There's no expectation and honestly he was just happy to be able to help them out. I'm super proud of him. So this is actually a kind of funny story but with an amazing twist ending. This is also not me but a friend of mine. So my friend had donated about a decade ago. Fast forward a few years and he meets this really nice girl. Turns out she was once in a lesbian marriage. Conceived a child via donor. But then realized she's actually bi. Her wife divorced her soon after. She ends up chatting with my friend and they hit it off. The first time he goes over to her place, he notices that her kid looks a lot like him. They did a DNA test and turns out the donor for the kid was him. He just met his son. Anyway, they've been together ever since and are actually engaged right now and pregnant with what is now their second kid. My cousin wanted me to be the donor for him and his wife. He did a lot of drugs in his youth that turns out sterilized him. I have no problem with him or his wife, but opted not to. When my cousin called before Christmas in 2019, I was racked by the decision. I gave it a few weeks and waited until after Christmas. Since I didn't want to either ruin or make someone's holiday season, I decided not to. While on the phone originally my cousin had stated he'd rather it be a family member than some turban head or Muslim or something. In the end that was the crux of it. I don't think I'd be able to stay silent on issues of racism around what would genetically be my son or daughter. I still think about it. I have no plans for kids of my own. And my cousin has come a long way from where he was. I dunno. Maybe if I get asked again I'll consider it. It was definitely a weird moment. Found out I was donor conceived at 28 years old. 2 days before my trip to go meet some new siblings I found via a DNA testing service. We all matched with the donor, who happened to decide the week before that he wanted to know if he had any kids. It's been a weird but really cool experience. Please, if you donate, make yourself available for contact at some point. There's a way too lengthy story about the pains I went through to find more info. To no avail. It sucked so bad not knowing anything about half of my family health and heritage. I'm pretty sure an Ohio court ruled that a sperm donor had to pay child support. Ducking idiots. Ducking idiots everywhere. If it's true I can imagine how that will discourage some percentage of donors. Should this really be marked NSFW? Sperm is bad. This isn't totally the same but I donated sperm before going into chemotherapy. As of now I'm cancer free. I don't know if I can have kids or not. Even though I'm fine now I know my chances of it coming back so I've kinda thought about recording videos for my future child just for them to have. Obviously a lot of that will rely on the future parents but I'd hate to leave my kid with questions. So just anyone can walk in and donate sperm? This could be a new way for me to buy GME. No. You can't just walk in and donate. There are requirements that needs to be met.